a lot of people in society today feel lost, lonely, alienated, without purpose, anxiety, fear. And when you connect and I guess realize that all that is around us is not all that is, and that actually there's a unity and a connection between all people and all souls, you feel somewhat, or at least I feel somewhat more at peace with things.
Welcome to the Mindful Paths podcast with Nick Day and Hari Kalymnios, where we explore the fascinating worlds of mindset, mindfulness, fitness, well-being, vitality, leadership, and personal development.
Our goal is to provide you with the insights to help you live a more fulfilling, happier, and healthier life.
If you're striving to be a better parent, friend, leader, colleague, or boss, or if you simply want to be more mindful and aware of the world around you, then this Mindful Paths podcast is for you.
We invite you all to eavesdrop on our conversations, and we challenge you to discover a new insight to help you on your own journey towards personal growth and positive change.
So sit back,
relax, and let's begin our journey together
on the Mindful Paths podcast.
Hari, how are we doing, mate? Stateside, how's your holiday going?
Yeah, it's really good. I had a massive lie-in just now, actually. So I woke up at like 10, I think it was.
Now, what time is it? What time is it you're in?
Now it's 11:47. So,
okay.
So I think we're 6 hours behind you. But the thing is, I just came from Vegas like 3 days ago. So my body clock was 2 hours behind anyway. And on Saturday morning, so I arrived Friday night, and then Saturday morning, we had to wake up at 6, which is 4 o'clock in my body clock time, because one of the boys, I'm staying with my best mate from school, really, and he's got 2 sons, and one of them was playing football at 7:30. So we got up at like 6, which was like 4 a.m. and we didn't go to bed till probably 1 because, I just arrived and chatting and everything. And then when we got up and got ready, suddenly realized the game wasn't until 11. It wasn't at 7:30. So we'd got up ridiculously early for nothing. And so my body clock was out of whack. And then Saturday night, he and I went out for some drinks. Yesterday was reasonably chilled. We just went for a swim in their local pool. But I just needed some rest last night. And so they've all gone out. Yeah, I've got
the
house to myself.
You flew to Vegas. Last I heard you were in Vegas, and then your next
I flew to Vegas. No, so I flew to Vegas. I spent 5 nights there, but not doing the Vegas thing. I was with a friend of mine from Mind Valley University that we've spoken about before. So a friend of mine, Cynthia, she lives in Vegas, and I hadn't seen her this year because she didn't come to Mind Valley this year, but I've known her for the last few Mind Valleys, and so I stayed with her for 5 days, and then I indecisive about what I was going to do, and I thought I'll come to Austin, Texas. And originally I was going to drive, but it was going to be like a four-day drive, and then I wasn't going to do justice to the stops on the way. So in the end, what I did is I drove to a place close to Vegas called Sedona. And when I say close to Vegas, I mean a 5-hour drive. So I hired a car, drove myself to Vegas, to a place called Sedona, which is about 5 hours away. Got there Sunday night, spent 4 nights there. And now Sedona is amazing, actually. I think you might quite like it. It's a very, I guess, spiritual place. There's lots of different kinds of hikes and trails that you can do. And there's lots of these things called vortexes, which is where apparently the energy of the earth enters and leaves. And there's different frequencies on the earth or something. So it's quite a spiritual place. Lots of people go there for meditation retreats and, auras and psychics. And actually, interestingly enough, I went on a UFO hunt, as it were.
Oh, that sounds cool. Did you see a UFO?
I saw lots, actually. But what they were, who knows? So basically, this woman, she's been in the game for like 40 years. She's got many stories, which I don't think will make it the subject of this call, but she has like these night vision goggles, like $4,000 army grade night vision goggles, plus 20-mile laser pointers. So there's 5 of us out there at night, about probably about 8 o'clock at night. And we're there for about an hour and a half. And she guarantees you seeing UFOs or your money back. And she identifies why it won't be a plane, because the planes always have a flashing tail light. And whether it's satellites or not, because she's got like satellite tracker. Well, you saw tons of stuff. You saw tons of stuff in the sky, and everyone who is in this area sees loads of UFOs apparently. But the thing is, the things I was seeing, they were generally moving in straight lines, different directions. So I still think that they could have been satellites. However, what I did see earlier on in the evening, like in the first half an hour, and I'm not sure if it was just because, maybe my contacts were a little bit blurry or something, but then nothing else was blurry that night, is I did see two objects like with lights, and they were more triangular, and they had like 3 lights in a triangle, and they were close together. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
And also you see you see lights, and if they know that you're there, if you like shine the pointer towards them, they illuminated up and down, like they kind of like signal to you, which a satellite wouldn't do. And they rested on the mountain as well. So
that's cool, man. I'd be intrigued by that stuff. For me, UFOs have got to exist, right? There's got to be.
They definitely.
There's got to be other stuff out there, right? Infinite possibilities and all that. However, I can't also dispel the idea that she's got a couple of kids somewhere on who knows this is happening, and she's rigged something up. And
no, definitely not. That wouldn't have been the case. I mean, but anyway, so I did Sedona for a bit, and then I went back to Vegas for a night, and then I flew to Austin. Now I'm in Austin, Texas.
So you're in Austin now.
Yeah. But
I'm intrigued. We've just opened up an office in Austin. Yet I've not actually been out there, and that's officially where we've launched. It's literally Austin.
Really?
Yeah, I've got the address here. We've launched in Austin and Tampa. We've opened offices in the US. Yeah, I haven't been out to them. So I
know people in Tampa as well, actually. So
there you go.
Cool. Yeah.
Next time I'll come out with you and mix.
Well, when you come out to Austin, either I'll come out or I'll introduce you to the people I know in Austin and Texas as well.
Talking of work and pleasure, I know you're a big fan of social connection. So Cynthia, is that a friend?
She's a friend. She's like what I would call my work wife.
Okay.
So like, she didn't come to Mind Valley this year, but I met her 2019, but we didn't properly connect. We did a little bit, and then via Facebook and everything, and then we properly connected last year. A lot of people thought we were together because of like our interactions and stuff, but we weren't. We were just you got like a friend who's like a member of the opposite sex that you just really get on with, and there's just that kind of stuff. So I just call her kind of my work wife, but we have a really good connection. And I hadn't seen her, and I needed to use up some air miles, wanted to go away for a few weeks, and so I thought I literally gave her like 2 days notice, and I said, do you fancy a house guest? And
this is very unlike the procrastinating Harry that I know, Harry. This is very good.
I was procrastinating, like to get to that decision. I was procrastinating. I was getting a bit annoyed and stressed. I was thinking, do I go to Bali? Do I go to Thailand? Do I go to this? I don't think I know I had booked it when I saw you, but like I'd only booked it the day before, and it took a long time to get to that decision. And then once you make the decision, and the same thing when it came to like coming to Austin, I was like, do I go to Colombia? Do I go to Montreal? Do I go to Toronto? Do I go to New York? Because my ticket was out from New York, but I've had to change it to leave from Austin now.
A lesser level of, I know what, I put myself out of my comfort zone this weekend as well. So I'll let you know what I've been up to because I haven't spoken for it.
Go for it.
Decided that with all, we've reported on triathlon races and everything else, and basically I'm a terrible swimmer, and I need to try and get my swim times down if I ever want to be really competitive. I had a couple of top 10 finishes, as you know, but want to improve. So I thought, right, I don't like swimming, but I want to get better at it. So I found a fantastic swim coach, and she hasn't given me any lessons yet, but she runs a class on a Wednesday here in Exmouth. And I thought, I'll go along, put myself out of my comfort zone. Went to that, hadn't swam in that kind of, crowded pool drill type session in years. Anyway, that was great. That got me back in the thing. And I got a message late on Friday. I think it was late Friday. Just saying, hey Nick, we're going to do a sea swim. Bear in mind all of my water fears. I get fearful in the water anyway, particularly open water. She's like, we're doing a sea swim from Beer to Branscombe. So it's just over 3 kilometer swim in the sea. Are you in? And I was like, okay. I decided when I spoke to my wife, Lucy is like, do I do this? Like, I haven't swam over 2 kilometers since Ironman Estonia, so 2 years ago. I hate being in the sea. Don't like open water anyway. Jellyfish, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I was then anxious for the next 12 hours, literally just concerned, what have I signed myself up for? Everyone's going to be really good swimmers. I'm going to, 3K is a long way to go. Don't want to be the person that ruins the swim because I have to be rescued or whatever. Loved it. Turned up. It was brilliant. No issue with the swimming. 3.25K banked all the way from Beer to Branscombe, round beautiful coastline, lovely water, great group, really supportive. And it's given me a bit of newfound confidence for the open water. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, well done. I've never swum that far. I think the last open water swim I did was 2006 when I did the Olympic triathlon in the docks in Excel. So, are you quite close to the shore, or is it like far away from the shore?
Yeah.
You're following the shoreline.
25 to 50 meters out.
So that's not too bad.
I mean, you're in trouble if you got no one around you and you get a cramp and you can't make it.
Right.
And it's cliff as well, so it's not really beach.
Oh, you can't really get rescued there and stuff.
Turn around and swim.
Just go on your back and float, I guess. I guess. And
the first 200 meters, you're hyperventilating, and I was a bit panicky going, well, getting.
Were you in a wetsuit?
It's fine. Yeah, I took a wetsuit.
Yeah.
And a pool.
Well, I mean, I mentioned to you before, I tried to go to the pool today. They've got this. I find America very weird, if I'm honest, because it's you know me. I like to move and walk, and I live in London, so everything's like walking, public transport. Vegas, I struggled, to be honest, because Cynthia lives a bit far away from the strip, like 20-minute drive, but like everything is like behind gated developments. No one walks on the pavement really anywhere except for on the strip. And even here in Texas, in Austin, Texas, where my friends are living, they basically had this old airport, and they knocked it all down and they put like, Truman Show kind of houses. So it's very Truman Show-y. But no one walks. But what they do have is they've got like community pools, which you can use for the residents of this basically, town in a way. So I walked there, which is when I was texting you earlier, and then it's closed. And I was like, why is this card not working? Because you've got to scan the card to get in, and then it's like closed on a Monday. So that's why I just walked back and said, okay, I can do the call. I didn't realize, but yeah, it's really nice. We went to the pool yesterday. And everything, but I thought in terms of like what we might talk about, I know you were talking a little bit about, should we talk about midlife crisis, and I thought maybe we could dovetail that in, but one of the things I know that I don't think you've done, but I think it would be quite interesting to do, to talk about, because the whole podcast is about, I guess, understanding ourselves a little bit better, awareness, all of that, is plant medicines. So for people listening who are unfamiliar, I guess plant medicines would be natural compounds that allow you, some people might call them drugs, but firstly and foremost, they're not drugs. Okay.
Well, homeopathy as well. Is that
No, not talking about homeopathy at all. Okay. I'm talking about drugs, or not drugs, sorry, plant medicines that alter your state of consciousness. Now, you can alter your state of consciousness through different things, like even meditation, breath work, but there are certain compounds.
Like LSD, magic mushrooms.
Less so LSD, because that is a human-derived compound. Although LSD also can help you see the world in a different way. But I would say, psilocybin, which is like magic mushrooms, ayahuasca, DMT. So we can talk about a few of these, because I have experienced some of these in the past, starting probably about 9 years ago.
We had a really good chat about this when I came to your birthday, right? It's a lot of people now are using some of these plant products for to support their therapy, to support coaching.
Absolutely. So you can do
unlocking that subconscious.
Yeah, you can do psilocybin therapy. A friend of mine has been doing that. I don't think that involves being with a therapist. Sometimes it involves being with a therapist while you take psilocybin. I think they're doing this in Imperial College London or Imperial University London, where they're doing therapy with either MDMA,
that's right,
or psilocybin. So psilocybin is more natural than MDMA, but so psilocybin is magic mushrooms. I have had those in the past. You have to be really mindful of the dose, and the thing is, when you do these things, it's really important to do it. It's not a party drug. It's not, I don't think, something to be done in that way. It's something to be done to explore your inner nature a little bit. And
we're not talking about it in that context, are we? Right? That's not why you're.
Well, we're not. But also, some people think, we're going to just do this and go out partying. It's not the right way of doing it. So we did. So ayahuasca. We start with ayahuasca because that's something. Again, I don't know a huge amount about these things, but ayahuasca, have you heard of ayahuasca before? I'm not sure if you have.
I think I probably heard of it through you, because we had a good chat about it the other day.
So ayahuasca is actually it's like kind of a combination of two plants, but they're generally found in the Amazon. And
yeah, in Mexico.
You tend to brew it into a tea, and I think it takes about 3 weeks to brew into a tea. And normally you experience this as a ceremonial drink, which helps you get into a different state of consciousness. So usually there's a shaman who's like a medicine man or a medicine woman or whatever, like a teacher in a way, who has had years of experience dealing with these ceremonies. And the first experience I had was probably in 2015, and I didn't go to the Amazon. I did it somewhere else, but it was a 3-day ceremony. Now, to get into the ceremony, you have to prepare your body. So it's like no meat, no dairy, no caffeine, no newspapers, anything like that. So you're sort of getting yourself into a ready state. For me, it was reasonably easy because I wasn't doing that stuff anyway. Then you have this tea, and this tea contains this thing called DMT, dimethyltrypto something or other. I can't remember the thing, but effectively it's also known as the spirit molecule. Now, DMT is in all living things, including humans, but it's most prevalent in humans at the point of birth and at the point of death. So the brain produces a huge amount of DMT when you're born and then when you die. And so that's why it's called the spirit molecule, because people believe it's how, the spirit enters the body and exits the body. Now, when you take DMT, when you have this ayahuasca, you have different people have different experiences. I won't go too much into the experience of others. I can only speak for my own, but even then it's a little bit hard to explain. But I take this tea, and the journey lasts for anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, depending on how much you have. And you effectively kind of almost exit the body, I guess. And some people see different things, right? Some people just see colors. Some people just have an immense sense of connection and oneness with the universe. Other people go on trips and see angels and aliens and other beings and creatures and stuff. For me, because I'm quite in my head, so I did 3 nights in a row, and most people had like 2 or 3 cups of tea. I ended up having I think 6 or 7 on that first night alone, because they kept giving me more, because I was holding on. I've got this sense of control, trust issues that I've come up through things. And so I remember being there, and rather than surrendering, I remember on the first night trying to force my hand to move to a certain position. And I was like, so basically you drink the tea, you lie down, you have these eye masks, and then you end up with these like weird, almost psychedelic kind of imagery. But then, like I said, people have different experiences. I remember my experience that night being that I would touch my face. I was like hitting my forehead. And it was really funny, because the way I can describe it is like, it felt like I was a hollow shell, and that my spirit was just within and without the body. It was like going all the way through. And the way I describe it is like, Iron Man, the superhero Iron Man, Tony Stark is in the body, but he's not the suit, right? And so when he touches the suit and he knocks on it, it's kind of hollow, and the sensors will say that you're touching, but you're not actually touching yourself, right? Because the person is in that. And that's what it felt like. It felt like I was wearing this Iron Man suit, and that this is just a weird shell. And I remember laughing quite a lot. And what was quite interesting is I heard voices and kind of like some, I guess, spirits coming through to me, and they were saying things like, he's not ready, he's not ready and stuff. And then what was interesting was that this was in 2015, and these were the same voices that I heard 2 years earlier. So 2 years earlier in 2015, I did this thing called Vipassana meditation, which is like a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And you spend 12 hours a day meditating, getting up at 4 a.m. And after about day 8, you get to the point where you can really sense every atom in your body, because you do these, you're so sensitive to the environment around you, and literally yourself on a cellular level. And you scan your body. And as I was scanning my body really rapidly on day 8, I felt myself kind of elevating, not physically off the ground, but just like something elevating. And as I was getting to that point, of hearing these kind of voices and spirits and stuff. And they were saying something similar, he's not ready, he's not ready or something. And so that was quite interesting. Now, how much of this is from the mind or not, I don't know, but lots of people have different experiences, but they're all somewhat similar. Other people come out and they're in tears. Now, what's interesting with ayahuasca is you can see people who are addicted to heroin for 20 years. They go down to the Amazon, they do an ayahuasca ceremony. Usually it's like maybe one night. Mine was 3 nights. Some people, they do like a week, and you do a lot of purging. And by purging is a polite way of saying you throw up a lot and you shit a lot, basically. So you purge from all sides. And they will come out of those experiences and never be addicted to class A drugs again. It's really profound.
First let me lower the tone because something popped into my head, which is completely not appropriate, but for the conversation, the level you've gone, but I have to ask it, otherwise it'll be on my mind, is why should a scientist never trust atoms?
Oh, why should a scientist never trust atoms? I don't know this joke. Go for it.
Because they make up everything. Anyway, completely unrelated. You mentioned atoms, the joke popped into my head, so I had to find that.
All right, fair enough.
Bringing it back into the realm of consciousness that we are here, right? So tell me, because I'm not quite sure where you're going with the conversation. I mean, with all honesty, right? Interesting experiences. I'm always skeptical about these Class A people. Whether it's happened or not. It might be one example. I think for me, like you can always create. No one ever seems to know the person it happened to. It's just these. In my opinion, these wives' tales of there was once one person who came in addicted for 20 years and they came away restored and healthy. And unless that person's been tracked for the next 20 years, we've got no idea if you end up going back to heroin or not. So this is my skeptical head, right? I'm not saying that guy didn't come back or girl thinking I feel much better now. We have no idea unless that person's been tracked since. We haven't really got a clue as to whether it cured them or not. So notwithstanding that, where did you want to take the conversation? Because things like magic mushrooms and DMT and LSD and these kind of things, substances, they're not in everyone's realm. People don't necessarily know what the benefits would be. Your experiences are potentially unique to some people that might be listening to this show. Why do you, I guess, what's your goal for bringing up these kind of substances for our listeners? What can they take away from it? What can I take? What can I learn from it? It's not my world.
I guess what I'm trying to, there's a couple of things really, is one that I feel like a lot of people in society today feel lost, lonely, alienated, without purpose, anxiety, fear. And when you connect and I guess realize that all that is around us is not all that is, and that actually there's a unity and a connection between all people and all souls, you feel somewhat, or at least I feel somewhat more at peace with things. Not that I'm not in my day-to-day, but I guess the benefits that people feel is, and again, you mentioned a few days ago about, should we bring it to midlife crisis? And I think it ties into midlife crisis as well.
I think it does.
I think a midlife crisis is often where, you've done your 10, 20 years of your career, you've got your family, and then you think, is this all that is? Or you're stuck in some sort of routine, and I'm not necessarily in that realm because I don't have like the wife and kids and stuff, but I've seen that with other friends where they're hugely successful in their roles, but yet they feel somewhat disconnected or unfulfilled or whatever it might be. And these experiences ultimately, overwhelmingly, at least in say an ayahuasca or DMT, they take you to often another realm, if you like, and another sense of consciousness, and where there is like almost no division and just unity, and a lot of people come out with that sense of love. Psilocybin is slightly different, and I can talk about a crazy day we had last week where we went for a hike and we did a bunch of things there, and I think it'd be useful to talk about that. So this is the real reason
it's on your mind, right? You've been
yes, because because the ayahuasca experience was 9 years ago. Last year, actually, when I went to Mexico, I did this thing called Bufu, again with a shaman. So Bufu is basically this poison, if you like, from a frog in the Sonora Desert that hibernates for 8 months of the year. And then when it doesn't hibernate, it releases this poison. And then various people they collect the poison, they dry it out, and then effectively you go for a ceremony and then you smoke it. And it's highly concentrated DMT. It's called 5-MeO DMT, which is about 5 times as strong as regular DMT, I believe. And again, what my experience was there, and again, I hold on quite a lot. So whereas other people in my group were doing one trip, I did like 3 trips in the space of 45 minutes. And so it's really weird. So you take a substance called rapé, where the shaman blows this powder up into your nostrils, and you can't breathe through your nose. But what it does is it helps open up your pineal gland and third eye to allow you to. So the third eye is often the seat of consciousness. It's our ability to connect with maybe I know some of this is going to sound weird to yourself and listeners because you're in the kind of here and now, but
have you come onto the show having just taken something, Harry? Just quick check for full disclosure.
No. All I've had has been some gluten-free bagels and avocado and a mushroom coffee. I've actually had some mushrooms. I've had a mushroom coffee, but it's just been a lion's mane, which is a medicinal mushroom, not a psychedelic mushroom. But the rapé helps open up your third eye. Then you smoke through this pipe, the DMT, and you basically hold your breath. And the shaman's wife actually is like, basically gags you, like puts her hand over your mouth and nose until you lose consciousness. And when you lose consciousness, it's such a weird feeling because then you lie back down.
Was there a ransom note at any point that was also given to your parents at the same time?
No, but you dissolve, the body dissolves, it feels like. And my third trip was the most impressive because I was more willing to let go because I had a bit of comfort about what the experience was like. But you dissolve, and it's almost like my experience was like my spirit traversed into the universe and into the Big Bang and throughout the Big Bang. And I ended up at this white cloud type space, which I perceived to be the gates of heaven. Right now, whether you believe in that or not, I don't necessarily believe in this concept of heaven, but that's what it came to me as being. And then I was told that that's as far as I needed to go. And then, I came back into the body, and then you come out, and it lasts about 10, 15 minutes, although there's no real concept of time when you do these things. So I guess what I'm trying to say with all that is that when you do these experiences, you could argue, okay, this is just psychedelic, this is in the mind doing these things. And maybe it is, I don't know. But what it is does it change you? Now, I don't feel personally that I come out with this profound sense of change necessarily, because I've had somewhat different experiences in the past, whether it be through meditation, breath work, the ayahuasca, the reading. But if you come in to this and you're just your regular Joe who's working a 9 to 5 and you've never done any of these things and you do this thing, you could come out profoundly changed. These aren't addictive substances. There aren't things that create dependencies or anything like that. But what they do is they allow an opening to a different state of thinking, because you suddenly realize, maybe what is not all that is. And that's why it's important to do that, I think, for some people.
I mean, there are, I think with some of these things, you're right in terms of my understanding. And I'm not whiter than white. At university, I had some from magic mushrooms and whatever, and not for the well-being reasons you're using them for. But
exactly. Maybe it's a party.
Yeah, right. And just mucking around. I mean, we're going back a bit now, but there is a reality that whilst not addictive, you can become more and more tolerant to these things. And actually, it's interesting because I fully understand why they could be used for medicinal purposes, in the sense that it opens up the subconscious. You can open up the ways that perhaps consciously we bury things. We talked about that in our last episode. We have those things on repeat. We don't want to confront the things that are really painful in our lives. And actually, I used the word a minute ago, it can open up those pathways to let that stuff out. And I'm a big believer in, if you don't let that stuff out, it stays rooted in that subconscious. So for those purposes, bringing it to a mindfulness mindset kind of realm, 100%, I can see the benefits. But I say that with a word of caution as well, because drugs like MDMA, and whilst there really lots of people will report well on their purported feelings of well-being and good, they can also be kind of drugs that can, if taken too often or go the wrong way, can actually increase things like anxiety as well, and actually can be linked to things like depression if misused. So I think there has to be an air of caution when we're talking about these things. But so I will come back. One thing I think that is interesting in all of this is I do definitely think it links to a midlife crisis. Now, I've labeled midlife crisis. It doesn't have to be the word crisis in there. Something we do at midlife is probably a better way of putting it. And I think you worded it really well. You go through life for years, creating your nest, if it might be, whether you've got a family, trying to become financially secure, trying to work your way up the career ladder, trying to get your family in whatever it is you want to achieve in your family, get married, buy your first house, all the kind of dull Truman Show, to use your words earlier, kind of things that we do or we perceive that we need to do as adults. And then we realize we've got all that stuff. We're not necessarily any happier than we were before, because we never needed that stuff in the first place to find what true happiness is. So we have, which has been labeled as a midlife crisis, we have this moment when we hit midlife and that kind of age of what we are now, 40s, probably to 50s-ish time, where we go, you know what, I've been following this pathway 9 to 5:30 for the last 20 years. I'm bored shitless of it. I need a bit more adventure. I don't sure if I've completely found myself. Is this what happiness is? Surely I can have a better legacy or create more stories than I've done so far. I need to start trying some stuff and doing some stuff for me and doing some stuff that gives me a different perspective. I want to give back to others because that's actually earning money doesn't fulfill me in the way that I thought it would, and all these kind of things. And I think that happens at around the same kind of time that a lot of people will go to places like the Amazon. We never think about going to those places in our 30s or in the middle of a career, but actually you hit that midlife moment and you go, I'm taking 2 years out of work. I'm going on a sabbatical. I'm going to go to the rainforest. I'm going to do some, ayahuasca or whatever it might be. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all for it. I think they actually not necessarily they're not meant to link, but I think they do link.
No, I think they do link. I think what I would just say, firstly, because you mentioned MDMA, and what I'm saying, MDMA is not a plant medicine, and I'm not talking about MDMA. But
because you mentioned MDMA at the start.
Yeah, but MDMA actually has been successfully used recently for treating things like PTSD in soldiers. Although interestingly, they did a study, and also surfing also worked really well. I think it was about and I think it's all to do with connection and flow and unity, but. MDMA.
I'll caveat that slightly. If they've been used in studies, then they're used in a controlled manner.
Exactly. And so this is what I'm saying. And also, you've got a very different personality to me in that I think, because you go full into things, like I said, you read that breathwork book, you go full into that breathwork course. Yeah. You sometimes, have, I would say, I don't know. I don't want to say more of an addictive personality, but you talked about video gaming. You talked about this stuff in the past.
There's a reason that I haven't done lots of these things, and it's exactly the reason I think you're trying to link to, which is there's a risk if I like it too much, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, because what I found with these plant medicines, now I'm someone who's super occasional. Like I've done it maybe. I guess I did that ayahuasca, I did that bufu, and more recently did something. So maybe 3 times in 8 years, or maybe 4 times. But there are people which I think they call themselves psychonauts almost, but they might do these things regularly. I remember going to my first ayahuasca, and then someone had just been and done it 3 months earlier and was going to go and do it another 3 months. And I feel there's a tendency to kind of over depend on this sort of stuff. And now I'm not that kind of person. I've got like a little bit more control when it comes to these sorts of things. So I think, firstly, I would say with any of these plant medicines, firstly, don't rush into anything. Like, I think I had been researching ayahuasca for 3 or 4 years before doing that. I wouldn't just listen to this podcast and go, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to go and do something and find something. I would say sit with it. It
surprised me you spend that much time researching ayahuasca.
Yeah, because it's not something to be taken lightly. It's not something to be rushed into, and it's not necessarily something for everyone. But when it comes to, say, recently we did a hike around Vegas, in the outskirts of Vegas, which, we did take some substances, I think San Pedro, and I originally wasn't taking mushrooms, but my friend gave me a little dose, because when I've taken mushrooms in the past where I've taken too many, I tend to get super paranoid and see things that aren't.
That's what I was talking about, linking it to anxiety.
Yeah. So I read into things that aren't necessarily there, or innuendo into conversation. But what's interesting is mushrooms tend to bring up the thing that you're not dealing with on a subconscious level. So I think for me, a lot of it's to do with trust and safety. So I'm in that situation, and I don't feel like I can maybe trust the people I'm with or the situation that I'm in. And so that's something I need to explore and deal with, which is quite interesting. So originally, I was taking this thing called San Pedro, which I think just basically gets you a little bit more connected to nature. And I think when you take, say, something like mushrooms or San Pedro, or even like LSD, do it in a natural environment with people that you're safe with, allows you to really connect with nature in a different way that maybe we weren't able to connect with. So we did some of that, and eventually there was a few other things that were involved, the rapé and actually DMT as well. Now, for me, when I took a DMT thing there, I didn't have much of what they call drop in. I didn't really go in. I had a nice sensation and feeling, but because I was still holding on, and also, to be honest, I was surprised. I wasn't expecting that we were going to do a DMT experience. So I didn't really drop in. So it's a bit, I was trying to explain to someone, it's a bit like hypnosis. Like people get afraid with hypnosis. They go, oh, I'm going to go and get hypnotized. The reality is you have to be susceptible to it, right? You have to want to.
To you is, yeah, not everyone can be hypnotized. You've got to be willing to do it in your subconscious as much as you're.
And whenever I've been hypnotized, I did like a hypnotherapy course like 12 years ago, and we did a lot of hypnosis on each other, practice and things. Sometimes the instructor would, if I put my hand up to be chosen, would never choose me, and because I wasn't open, I wasn't willing to do that. So I think it's similar with some of these experiences where if you hold on too tight, and I've got quite a strong mind, and even the shaman in Mexico last year, they were like, well, we haven't seen people with such a strong grip on things on mind, and he also said, look, maybe you're reasonably balanced anyway, so that's why you're not having these kind of profound, crazy experiences. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess going back to the hike, what it allowed us to do was, I guess, connect with nature a little bit more, connect with ourselves a little bit more, find a little bit more insight. And actually what I find really interesting, as long as you take the right dose with the mushrooms and things like that, is when people are talking to you or speaking in conversation, it really feels like they're speaking directly to you. It is, I don't know how to describe it. It's like it's piercing your heart. It's like what it feels like often is someone is speaking to me, but it's not them speaking to me. It's a spirit speaking through them directly into my soul. And when that happens, because that might happen, like you might have like, let's say a 10-minute conversation, but there might be like one or two sentences that suddenly feel that way. And it's like, that's something I need to look at and focus and think about in myself. So it gives you really good self-awareness, I feel, which is kind of what all this podcast is about.
You may have heard it before. It's a phrase that I don't know whose quote it is. It's certainly not mine, so I'll reference that straight off the bat. You're talking about finding, gives you insight, but they say insight is sight from the inside. We don't think about the word. We don't often break down what the words are, right? But if you think about sight from the inside, something that we feel that's within us, that feeling of something in our gut, that's real insight. It's not just about learning a new fact. For me, that's acquiring knowledge is different to acquiring an insight into something. And maybe when you're in those states and you're on DMT or magic mushrooms, it gives you more of those insights, those sights from the inside that perhaps you wouldn't be able to obtain so easily. What I find interesting though, and we had a bit of I wouldn't say debate, that's the wrong word. We an inquisitive conversation when we were at your party, right? Where you were saying, do I think that everything can be solved through
It's so funny you're about to say that, because that's in my head right now, and I wanted to talk about this. So let's go on to this. Yeah,
I got the sense that we disagreed. I think the really important bit was that for me is talking therapy I think can solve everything. By the way, I'm a big believer in that, but it has to be with the right person. So I don't believe I could solve all your problems with talking therapy with my level of expertise, but that doesn't mean that someone else or a combination of people couldn't. I think there has to be a willingness from the recipient to let go, and that can involve someone. I think it's a bit like anything. If you go into taking a substance with the wrong attitude, you're more likely to have a bad trip. If you go into hypnosis saying I can't be hypnotized, you're less likely to be hypnotized. And I think the same applies for talking therapy. But if there's someone who readily wants to, recognizes there's a problem they want to unlock, recognizes that they need support to do that, then I personally believe with the right person, and it's very much a chemistry thing here, and that's sight from the inside for the right person. You either have chemistry or you don't. If you have chemistry with the right individual, I do believe that talking therapy with the right qualified professional, the right experienced professional, can get the same results. Whether they get them as fast or not, that's a different debate. But I do believe everything can be solved if people are willing to have the right openness to it. But I haven't experienced your experiences. You might think, actually, Nick, you've been to my level. It's different.
Well, I think, and it's so interesting you brought this up right now, because in my head, that's exactly where I was going to go with it at this point in our conversation. Because for the listeners, we were around the fire actually. So we had the fire going, and we were talking. Myself, you, and I think Noam was still there, a friend of mine, and. What I wanted, and so basically what I guess our difference of opinion was that, yes, you're thinking like all things can be solved with the talking therapy. I'm thinking, and the reason I'm surprised that you believe that in a way is because we've talked about before how, trauma can affect the body, right? Affect us, because, and from a simple level, let's think about stress, right? Sometimes when you get stressed, you end up with like a tight neck, right? Like, and then you keep getting stressed, and that's where you hold your stress. You get this tight neck, and then over years, you've got this tightness there all the time. Now that you could argue, okay, let's get rid of the stress, and then will the neck go back to normal? It may not. It might be so used to creating that pattern of movement in your body that actually it needs to be worked out through, let's say, massage or some other therapy. So then that's not solving the problem with talking. So this is where I'm saying that sometimes we root things on such a.
You could argue that really depends on the time of intervention. So
yeah, you could. But what I'm saying
if the intervention of talking therapy was instigated earlier than before the back pain began, then it wouldn't be there in the first.
But that's solving the issue at point of issue, which most people are not going to do, because it's going to be like, years later, for example, when it's like, and we don't even know sometimes what is creating that issue. And so one of the quotes I like from Einstein is, you cannot solve the problems on the same level of thinking that created them.
Yeah, 100%. What got you here won't get you there is another one.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you are talking about, I guess, issues, yes, talking therapy can help, but like also there are therapies, for example, and we're not talking plant medicine therapies here. We're talking, say, EFT. Is it EFT? Emotional freedom technique, tapping, right? EMDR, which is the eye movement disassociation stuff. We may be talking hypnotherapy, right? Again, you could argue, is that talking therapy?
Yes.
It's usually, it's kind of going into the subconscious.
It's definitely in the talking therapy realm, because you don't need any external substance for that to happen. You might.
No, but I'm not saying that we need external substances either in this what I'm talking about. So like tapping is where you may be having like anxiety. So tapping is often used for anxiety, right? And you could say that this is talking therapy as well, because you tend to talk as you're tapping, but you're not talking necessarily through the problem.
Here, because I'm not for a second saying that none of these things don't work. I'm not saying that tapping doesn't work or any of these things don't work. That's a separate situation. I'm not saying
would you call those talking therapies?
What I'm saying is, the people that use tapping and maybe it works for them, fantastic, brilliant. Keep doing what works. But if tapping didn't exist, I still think we could get to the same solution through a talking therapy approach. So I'm not saying don't use those things. Don't do them if they're working for you. Do what works. That's great. But if none of those other things existed, I believe you could still get the same outcome with the right coach and the right level of talking therapy, whatever that way takes it. So it's not about replacing it. It's whether the question you gave me is, do I think talking back around your file was, do I think talking therapy could solve a lot of the problems we're hearing here where other people have used medicinal methods to overcome them? And I believe the answer is yes in every case. Now, I'm not saying those methods don't work too. I'm just saying I think you could still get to the same result with the right talking.
But it may be, let's say, for example, let's take drug addiction, right? And I know you said at the beginning, okay, well, we need to see this, like these people who have had 20 years of drug addiction and suddenly solve their issues overnight. So yes, you could say, well, okay, 20 years of talk therapy might get that person to give up drugs or whatever it might be, but they could be a 3-day ceremony on a plant medicine does the same thing.
Yeah, but well, it could do, but equally, it could be 20 years trying to get off it with methadone. It could be 3 days of talking therapy that makes them see something in a different way and changes it. I mean, you can give an example either way.
I guess
I don't think that one's.
Yeah, I guess we'd probably agree to disagree. I feel like there are things that are so on a deep unconscious level that you consciously can't get to it. Now, you could say, okay, the talking therapy might unlock something on an unconscious level that suddenly you see it in a different way because. Yeah, and again, it comes back to, like I said, when you're sometimes on mushrooms, you hear someone say something, but you're interpreting it in such a unique, personal way that it creates a massive insight to you.
I'm not saying it doesn't take a skilled
that's talking therapy.
I'm not saying it doesn't take a skilled therapist to make you see something in a different way. But ultimately,
I feel like for me, for example, because I'm quite a cognitive, in my brain kind of person, it almost becomes worse because I'm thinking through that conversation.
I guess the argument I would have, going back the other way, right? So, by the way, I'm also not arguing that it's more effective, and never have I made that argument. The question you gave me was, do I think it can solve things? So I think it can do. Does not necessarily say that talking therapy is always the most effective method. I just think that talking therapy can help.
Yeah, okay. All right.
But to go back to that point, I think one of the reasons a lot of people are using these new alternative chemicals and plant products, whatever, in conjunction with therapy, by the way, so in like the Imperial study being a great example, is because they allow the recipient, the person that needs support, to more readily open up their subconscious
definitely,
for analysis or for challenge. I think one of the most difficult things for someone to do in a one-to-one partnership where there's no chemicals or products involved is to go to that really, really difficult place which we've locked away. And it's really, really hard to open those Pandora's boxes for whatever reasons, for fear predominantly. We don't know, for fear of judgment, for fear of response, for fear of what it might open up, for fear of many, many things. And I think that taking another way just gives us an excuse. I don't mean that it can be taken, the word excuse can be taken negatively. I don't mean it negatively, but an excuse to open up those things in a different way, to absolve some of the responsibility for what's going to come up, because you're in a controlled environment where you can label it and blame it on something else for it coming to the surface. But I think when these things come to the surface in those scenarios, conscious or not, you know they're there. It's whether or not you want to let them up. And you might not be able to find it straight away. It's just that these things can accelerate the process. So at no point am I saying that talking therapy is more effective. I'm just saying that I think you can get to the same end goal with it. It's just maybe you have to be more patient, or you may be more specialist. But usually it's with the patient, for want of a better word, the person that needs support is the difficulties in them confronting what they know is really, really deep rooted down there, and the ego protecting them from that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily challenge you on that. I guess where I sort of, the question is like, do you want to sit with a problem for 20 years, or do you want to be able to kind of resolve it in?
But our debate was never what's most effective. It was always whether.
Yeah, I still don't know whether the reason I'm challenging the idea of talking therapy can solve everything is because ultimately, not all issues are known, right? So something so for example, breath work is a perfect example. I don't know whether you've done any deep breath work before, but sometimes you go into these big rooms with like 100, 200 people, and you're doing like these breathing techniques for like an hour, 2 hours, even longer. Some people will come out and they are in floods of tears. They feel lighter, and they don't know what's shifted. They don't know what the issue was, but something has shifted in them.
I think people always know. Maybe that's me being a skeptic.
Maybe they know. Maybe they realize. I don't know. I had this thing happen to me 15 years ago. I didn't even think about it. And I guess like the reason I'm kind of bringing it up to you in particular, because like we've talked about sleep many times before, right? Yeah. And you've got your sleep situation happening, which you're managing and everything else. I just feel like I would just be super curious. Let's put it like this. I'd be super curious to see if there was, let's say you did something like a DMT or an ayahuasca or a mushroom.
Mate, I'd be super curious.
And you did something, and then suddenly something has unlocked inside of you, which you didn't know needed unlocking.
Yeah. Sure.
That is suddenly you can.
And hey,
you can
know what? I'm open to that, Harry. The beauty of what we're both going through in our journeys at the minute, and hopefully the people listening to this, is like what we know now may not be what we know tomorrow. And I'm very open to changing my perspective. I'm very open to saying what I said in 2023 is not what I think in 2024. Yeah. That's cool, right? That's part of the exciting journey. But what I believe right now is, and interestingly, you used the words where someone will say, "I don't know where it came from." That's the first thing I would challenge. And I, rightly or wrongly, there'll be people probably listening to this who think Nick doesn't know what the hell he's talking about right now, and they strongly disagree with me. And by the way, that's also fine.
That's fine. That's totally fine. And
what I say is, when anyone says "I don't know" in that context, I don't know where these tears came from. I don't know where that anger came from. I don't know. They may not know in that moment, in that conscious moment, but if you explored it, they'd soon find out where it came from. It doesn't take too long.
Quite possibly, but like I guess like. The reason
they really ask themselves honestly, they could locate it themselves.
The reason I guess I'm drawn to things that maybe can solve things on a non-verbal level is because, especially when you're someone like me who's very much in their head, very much, like second guessing, planning, trying to fit. This is why I say to people, like, even like if I went to like a therapist and I went to like a hypnotherapist on NLP, any modality I've trained in, it's not a good idea for me because I'm there going, oh, Are they using this technique?
Yeah.
Well, so I need to do something totally fresh that I've got no real idea about, that confuses my brain, takes my cognitive.
Yeah, you're like the
brain out
equivalent of someone who starts on cannabis as drugs and gets to heroin to give them a bigger fix. You're on that modality
no,
fix.
definitely not, because I have smoked cannabis before and I haven't progressed. No, I'm not like that at all, actually.
I'm teasing, Harry. I'm teasing.
Yeah, because like I said, what I'm quite good at with these is I'm good at exploring these things without becoming dependent on any of these things. And what I would say to anyone listening, if you're that kind of person, maybe you shouldn't really explore these things, because if you have a habit of dependent on things, or if you're latching onto something, what I find is that a lot of people who are drawn to these things latch onto them, and they use this as they use it
for escapism, to escape what's really going on.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that can be dangerous as well, personally.
Yeah, so I'm not someone that would be going, like, I've met people and they're like doing plant medicines every week or every month, and I'm like, I'm not sure that's necessary. Now, maybe like people in tribal communities, they do a lot of these things. They have like these vision quests, right? And this can be done with fasting, right? I think one of my friends, she said she did like her most profound stuff happened as she did like a 7-day. So she had to go to the mountains somewhere outside San Sebastian. We've been to San Sebastian, didn't we, when we did our cycle trip once?
Yeah, it was amazing.
So she went there and she did a hike for 7 days by herself, water only fast. She's in the mountains, and prior and post, you do like these sweat lodges as well, I think, which get you into like different states of consciousness. But she said her most profound like learnings about herself and everything was in that moment, right? And there's probably a reason why Jesus went to the desert for 40 days, right? And meditated. And so these vision quests, these things can happen through fasting, through breath work, through meditation, through plant medicines, through near-death experiences, right? I've got a friend who basically died and was brought back. And so these things, and actually, I mean, going back to people like towards the end of their life, sometimes they take these experiences and then they find peace with what may happen later, because maybe they realize that all this is not all that will be, or whatever it is that works for them. So I just feel like there's a lot to be explored here. And what I'm fascinated by is that a lot of society, like governments and so forth, for example, LSD, which is a human-made compound, but allows you to see beauty and connection in things that otherwise wouldn't, and open your mind up to possibilities. Now, my skeptical mind says, like, government banned these things years ago because they don't want people to kind of have this level of awareness.
You don't want to get me started on the whole pharmaceutical. I don't know. I'll be down a rabbit hole on that stuff.
Let's not talk about that. But what I would say is
controlling the world.
It's about. I would say, for me, life is about exploration, experiences, curiosity, and so having these allows a different way of thinking sometimes. And going back to something you said a few moments ago, which I wanted to touch on, because how when we had these conversations maybe 10, 12 years ago, you would be coming to it from a different frame of reference, because as would I, because we've had 10, 12 years of evolution, but you're also now down that coaching journey, down, reading different books kind of journey. The people I'm staying with here, actually, it's quite interesting because my friend's wife, she came and visited us last year, and she's like, oh, have you read this book by so-and-so, have you read this book? And she's suddenly into like similar things. And she said, I think this year, oh, when you said that thing like 10 years ago, because my friend here suffered a heart attack when he was 33 years old. And a few months afterwards, he was talking about all the medications he was on and this and the other. And now I was a little bit eager back then, because I was just learned maybe that there's alternative ways of solving issues that maybe current society doesn't allow them to be solved, because for whatever reason, right? And I was saying to him, oh, you know what? I don't know, right? Maybe you have to be on this medication for the rest of your life, but maybe you don't. But the thing is, if you decide that you do, then you will never look for anything else. If you decide that's not the way, then yes, it might still be that you are on that medication for the rest of your life, but you will still be seeking other things.
This isn't too dissimilar to what we spoke.
Yeah, but now they're in a different situation, right? So now she's suddenly going to me, oh, actually, you know how you said that thing? I'm starting to believe that maybe, you know, you're right. And actually there could be a different way. And even my friend yesterday was talking about this, and he's like, well, you know what? I've actually kind of stopped taking this medication.
Well, I've just finished watching a couple of things. I just finished watching Painkiller on Netflix.
Oh, good. I'm glad you done watch that.
Really good.
Have you watched Dope Sick as well? Have you watched Dope Sick?
No, I've seen those.
It's about the same thing, but it's I think it's better than Painkiller, but go on.
Well, Painkiller's really good, but actually, that's something that is interesting. But what you were saying there actually links, interestingly, to our last episode where I brought up the Tim Ferriss quote, where you can have anything you want, but you might not have. It's all about choice. You just may not be able to get it here. If you want to live on a desert island with cocktails all life, go and move to, you know, the Philippines or somewhere else where you can have that and live on nothing. So it's always about choice. And people often forget we live in the, you know, in the Western world where the medicine is what it is and the government mandates what we can and cannot have. I remember when I was 19 years old, I went into the 3-peat challenge to raise money for a friend of mine who was unable to get the beta interferon treatment to treat her MS. And it was like, well, if she'd gone to if she lived in a different county, she'd have had access to it, but she didn't in the county we were living in. And it's all the politics of it. But the interesting thing of even within the Western medicine we get access to here, if you go over to somewhere in the Eastern world, they do things completely different.
Totally different.
And, you know, but what we would give our people, they wouldn't give. And I remember seeing a Chinese acupuncturist. She was amazing. And she gave me all these herbs and remedies and teas and foot patches and stuff that you'd never get.
Which incidentally have been around thousands of years, whereas modern medicine's been around, 100? And actually, interestingly, even in the West, you find massive differences. So, like, obviously, I'm here in the States where they over-medicate everyone. Yeah. Everyone's on some level of medication here, like 70, 80% of the population. My friend was talking about how, I don't know, the doctor was like just going into prescribing antibiotics for like no reason, like no.
It's become the norm. It's become socially acceptable.
But at least in the UK, they're like they're more resistant to prescribing antibiotics, generally speaking. But in the States, and she was talking about ADHD as well, and how, you know, the first port of call is medicate. Right, it's the first. And now we're not saying that medication isn't useful; it can be useful, but I think it should be one of the last resorts that is.
Well,
that is
I mean,
explored.
We can go down a rabbit hole with some of this stuff, but you know, my mum, which I've mentioned, I think on a previous episode, is a specialist when it comes to baby development and brain development in particular. She's done a lot of. She's a doctor, academic doctor, and she's done a lot of research into chemicals used in different baby products and sun lotions of that and how they impact hormone levels and all sorts. You know, a lot of these things we talk about, you know, people have ailments and issues later. I don't know if ADHD is one of those, but it could be, which actually could also be, you know, later ramifications for the chemicals we put on our skin as babies, right? And the way that it plays with hormones and everything else. Yeah. So I think going back to the whole conversation we've had today is, and it's Sydney Banks said that the most powerful thing in the world is a thought. Sometimes we just need to step back and think, is this the only treatment? Is this the only option? Am I really being honest about what my problem is? Am I being open-minded that this drug may or may not open up what I need it to open to? Am I using this as an excuse because I'm not willing to go there myself? Am I doing this because it's a midlife crisis? Am I doing this because I need support? And just having those thoughts and having those questions with ourselves and being open-minded to new ways of doing things is going to see progress.
And a lot of people don't question things. And I have another friend, and you're talking about hormones and things, and very real example here, someone I personally know, which I won't name, but you know, when they had moved to the US, they started to notice, right, and this is a female, that they started to be getting facial hair, right? Like really embarrassed, right? And then after a bit of reading, they realized, you know, it could be glyphosate. So they put glyphosate, like basically in their weed killers and stuff here in the States. I don't think we do in the UK. And so things are sprayed with it and it messes with the hormones. And as soon as they started stopping doing the conventionally grown food and going to organic, everything went back to normal. And it's like a very real example. It's like, you know, and I'm looking, I'm in the States, so as you know, I have struggled. I actually ordered some food the other day. I had to throw it down. I literally threw it down the toilet. As I was eating it, I felt like I was eating toxic waste or something. And it was like, because we noticed the difference. Like,
but also example, your body be more in tune with the differences as well because you eat so well.
But like, generally. I think anyone from the UK coming to the US eating the food in a regular. I mean, obviously, if you go to like somewhere like Whole Foods, or I went to an amazing plant-based restaurant, which was great, but generally, the average restaurant in the UK versus the average restaurant in the US, and a normal eater is going to taste the difference. Is going to taste that,
While I've got you, I'm going to use it because actually I meant to ask you this before we got started, but seeing as we're on a live recording, I'm talking about food, and I'll ask a question. So my daughter asked me, what can I eat that isn't, she's not a big fan of fruit, isn't chocolate bars, and she's had enough of granola bars, that she can make at home or do that isn't, she's not allowed to take nuts to school. And I'm like, okay, it's a bit of a quandary now. I'll ask her. She's like the health food expert of things we can pull together. What can I make? What could she eat that she could take with her that's quite easy? I suggested flapjacks. I thought that might work. I don't know. Not too dissimilar to granola, though, is it really?
Yeah, I mean,
granola bars.
I would say something fat-based, right? Because I don't know if it's something like hummus and carrots or hummus and something can work. Fat, right? Something that is going to be based in avocado or based on hummus or something fat-based or protein-based, because that's going to quench the hunger and give you sustained energy. Things like granola bars, all of that, they're quick sugars, generally speaking. They're not what I would call good. Because I don't snack because of my smoothie, and my smoothie is what I determined to be the saving grace for me.
I've tried to make those smoothies, and they've come out so bad. I've been drinking it. One of them made me nauseous for a whole day. I genuinely thought I've been drinking.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to tweak things, right? My smoothie took 10 years to get to where it is. So, like, what I would say is persistence, right? Practice makes progress. But I would say, what could be a snack? So you can't take nuts. I mean, I don't know about making bars and things like that. I mean, you could. Do you juice as well? Because you can sometimes use the leftover pulp.
Yeah, the pulp.
And make things from that. And that's going to be basically massively fibrous. So that would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be fibrous. Maybe I'll Google.
But can she take something like hummus with her?
Or is that that's not bad. It's something I hadn't thought of. So I'll have a look at
or like an avocado based, something based with avocado. So like, what would you put? I don't know, because I'm reluctant to say some sort of sandwich thing. I mean, you could, I suppose, have like something like a really dense bread, like a rye bread or a flaxseed bread. There's those super expensive thin packets, and then base that with avocado. So like based it in avocado. That, I think anything that is either avocado or hummus based, something which has got a lot of fat in it, and of hummus is chickpeas, it's protein as well, would be beneficial. That's what I would say.
There you go. Heard it here first. Well, Harry, interesting chat today. Covered some ground, psychedelics and magic mushrooms.
Yeah, and I actually do want to say to the audience listening, when we finish up this, because I don't want people to go off and just go and jump into things. Like, I would say do research. I think there's a documentary on Netflix called The Spirit Molecule, and that goes into what DMT is and people doing journeys. I would say, sit with it 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. Explore things, speak to other people who've had experiences, maybe look online, and then don't necessarily seek it out. But if you're in that mindset, it will start to come to you, and then you can explore it that way, rather than, Harry and Nick were talking about psilocybin, let's go and find some magic mushrooms from this guy down the street and pop them while we go to the club. Do not do that. Okay, sit with it 6 months, a year, explore it, read some things, watch some documentaries, talk to some people, and then maybe you're on a trip somewhere, and then you connect with someone and you research them a little bit more and you understand more what's going on. That's the way I would do it.
Yeah, or take my lead and just leave it all to Harry and carry on as normal. The beauty is everyone has the power to choose whatever they want to be and whatever they want to do. So we'll leave it with them. There's a disclaimer in our show notes for those that are a little bit more concerned, but you've always got the power to choose. So let listeners decide what's right for them. Listen, exactly. Harry, enjoy your rest of your US journey. Where's your next stop?
We're actually going to go to Houston tomorrow, I think, with my friend. So my friend, he's super successful doctor, surgeon, but does lots of consulting work now. He's doing a keynote speech in Houston on Wednesday morning. So we're using it as a bit of an excuse for a lads trip. So we're going to go road trip to Houston, which is only 2.5 hours away. So Houston for a couple of nights, back to Austin for one night, and then I fly back Friday and I'm back Saturday morning. So next Monday when we meet, I'll be severely jet lagged probably, and having worked a full day at a school and the next day. So hopefully Monday evening when we meet, we can have that call in. I won't be too spaced out. We'll see.
Cool. All right, dear. Well, listen, enjoy Houston. Enjoy the rest of the States. Good to connect as always. And I'll see you in a week, bro.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mindful Paths podcast with Nick Day and Hari Kalymnios.
We hope you found our discussion insightful and gained valuable takeaways to support you on your journey.
Please do leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform and share an episode that's resonated with you with a friend or a family member who you think may also find it valuable.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to ensure you never miss a future episode.
In the meantime,
we'll continue exploring Mindful Path topics to provide you with more insights and ideas to support your personal growth.
For now, thank you for your support, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode of the Mindful Path podcast real soon.